What if I told you that 2,000 years ago, in the bleeding heart of a chaotic empire, a group of men mapped out the exact psychological blueprint for absolute inner calm, unbreakable discipline, and a life entirely stripped of regret? And what if the reason you feel anxious, emotionally exhausted, or profoundly stuck right now, especially if you have crossed the threshold of 40, is simply because no one ever taught you how to run this operating system? Most people over 40 live under a heavy social illusion. They believe that personal growth is a game for the young, and that maturity is merely about maintaining what you have already accumulated. But human behavior psychology reveals a much darker, more liberating reality. Your midlife is not a countdown to expiration. It is the precise moment your mind is finally mature enough to build an unshakable internal fortress. Imagine a man who wakes up before the sunrise. He doesn't check his phone. He doesn't react to the digital noise. He sits in the shadows of a quiet room, preparing his mind not for a perfect day, but for the most brutal one. He knows that before the sun sets, someone will betray him. His plans will crumble, and external chaos will strike. Yet, his pulse never rises. He is completely at peace. That man was Marcus Aurelius, the absolute ruler of the ancient world. He didn't write his philosophy for ivory towers. He wrote it in muddy military tents as a tactical survival manual for his own soul. Today, we are stripping away the superficial self-help noise. We are going to dissect the 5 core Stoic pillars of behavioral psychology that will permanently upgrade your cognitive operating system, reclaim your mental RAM, and redefine your personal growth after 40. Welcome back to the Laboratory of the Mind, Chapter 1. The Radical Audit of Control. Asterisk, the bedrock of all mature personal growth begins with a single, brutal question that most adults fail to ask. What do you actually own? The ancient slave-turned-philosopher, Epictetus, divided the entire human experience into 2 uncompromising columns: things within your control, and things outside your control. Inside your column sits your thoughts, your judgments, your character, and your raw effort. Outside your column sits everything else: the economy, the aging of your body, the toxic behavior of your boss, and the opinions of your peers. Through the lens of human behavior psychology, the greatest source of burnout after 40 is the catastrophic misuse of mental energy. We spend our nights lying awake, obsessing over column 2. We try to micromanage reputations, worry about future uncertainties, and rehash past divorces or failures with bitter regret. The Stoic response is not passive. It is a surgical strike. Let it go. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your anxiety changes nothing about the external variable. Yet it completely destroys the sovereign territory of your mind. When you pass 40, your time asset is scarce. You cannot afford to outsource your peace to things you do not own. True behavioral mastery means focusing 100% of your remaining bandwidth on your judgments and your responses. You fire the external audience. You stop managing illusions. You control the self. And you release the rest. Chapter 2. Ferocious Acceptance. Amor fati. Asterisk. Most people treat life as a series of negotiations. They say, I will be happy if my business succeeds, if my relationship lasts, or if my life goes exactly as planned. But pattern recognition after 40 has already taught you that life does not negotiate. It breaks things. The Stoics developed a radical behavioral tool called amor fati, the fierce love of one's fate. It goes light years beyond mere acceptance. It does not say, tolerate your hardships. It demands that you look at your deepest scars, your failed marriages, your financial setbacks, and your aging body, and say, this is exactly what was supposed to happen, and I will use it as raw fuel. When an obstacle blocks your path, The untrained mind treats it as a detour and halts. The mature Stoic mind applies the law of Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about the darkest seasons of your past. Did they not forge the exact depth, resilience, and crystallized intelligence you possess today? Suffering is a psychological multiplier if you resist it. But when you embrace the crisis as a necessary evolutionary pressure, you cease to be a victim of your history. You become its author. The breakdown is no longer your burial. It is your excavation. Chapter 3. The Cosmic Perspective. Asterisk. When you are trapped in the day-to-day anxiety of professional pressure or personal stagnation, your psychological vision becomes hyper-focused on the microscopic. An awkward conversation, a critical comment from a peer, or a temporary financial dip feels like an existential catastrophe. Marcus Aurelius practiced a daily cognitive meditation called the view from above. When the burden of governing an empire at war became crushing, he would mentally zoom out of his physical body. He would visualize looking down at Rome, then higher until the continents blurred, and finally until the entire planet was nothing but a pale blue speck suspended in the silent vastness of cosmic space. In the grand sweep of 13.8 billion years of cosmic time, how significant is the trivial noise you are agonizing over today? This psychological zoom out does not invalidate your life. It ruthlessly dissolves the superficial drama. It burns away the petty anxieties, the social comparison, and the desperate need for validation from people who won't even remember your name in a century. What remains after the noise is cleared is the rare, unfiltered gratitude for the present moment, the only space where your power actually exists. You are a conscious spark on a tiny rock, gifted with the brief opportunity to choose virtue, depth, and sovereignty. Act like it. Chapter 4. Inoculation through voluntary discomfort. Asterisk. We are currently living in the most friction-free temperature, controlled, hyperstimulated era in human history. We have instant gratification at our fingertips. And yet, human behavior psychology shows that we have never been more fragile, more anxious, or more easily broken by minor inconveniences. The wealthy Stoic statesman Seneca understood that comfort is a deceptive prison. If your well-being depends on your morning coffee being perfect, your environment being exactly 70 degrees, and people constantly smiling at you, you are not a free individual. You are a hostage to your luxuries. Seneca's behavioral antidote was radical, voluntary discomfort. He would set aside a period of days to sleep on hard floors, fast from fine food, wear rough clothing, and ask himself, is this the condition that I so deeply feared? Asterisk. For the mature mind, personal growth requires intentional training through chosen resistance. You must actively practice inoculating your nervous system against adversity. Choose the cold shower. Choose the brutal, honest conversation. Choose to step away from the digital dopamine loop. You don't do this because you love suffering. You do it because you refuse to be owned by your comforts. When you willingly choose the harder path, you build an unshakable psychological armor that renders you completely invincible when real hardship strikes. Chapter 5. Eudaimonia and the strategy of subtraction. Asterisk. All of these behavioral principles are pointing toward a singular destination that the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, the ultimate flourishing. Life. In the first half of life, your ego convinced you that growth was an equation of addition. You believed that to achieve eudaimonia, you needed to accumulate more clients, more status, more relationships, and more obligations. But by the time you cross 40, this accumulation creates a crowded, heavy mental space. You become a prisoner of the very things you fought to build. True personal growth in your second adulthood requires a total inversion of logic, mastery through brutal subtraction, As Marcus Aurelius famously commanded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. B1 eudaimonia does not depend on your external conditions, your bank account, or your relationship status. It is built entirely from internal choices. The consistent choice to live with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, to flourish after 40. You must look at your life canvas with a cold analytical eye and begin pruning the excess. Subtract the superficial relationships you maintain out of pure guilt. Subtract the outdated goals that belong to a past version of you that no longer exists. Subtract the desperate need for external applause. By clearing away the noise, you concentrate your energy into a lethal, focused beam of light on what actually matters, your legacy, your sovereignty, and your deep internal peace. Conclusion **. The ancient Stoics are gone, but their tactical blueprints survived the fire of centuries because they are fundamentally true. They did not promise a life devoid of pain. They promised a life where pain no longer holds any power over your behavior. If you are standing on the other side of 40, stop looking backward with regret and stop looking forward with anxiety. The wheel is in your hands, and it has always been there. You possess the raw data of life experience, the neurological depth of crystallized intellect, and the absolute freedom to write your own final chapters. The fortress is ready. Build it. Protect it. If this psychological deep dive spoke to your sovereignty today, leave a comment below with the declaration, "The fortress is ready." Subscribe to the Stoic Mindset Lab for your ongoing mental sea.